Chapter 3, Mishna Bay's Mishna 2. Today's learning is sponsored by Barry Steinberg. L'zeich Nishmas, his mother, his yard site is today, Yehudis Basraga Faivel, and grandfather Avram Abba, her grandfather, Avram Abba ben David. Neshama Shavan Aliyah. Okay. The Eilim Makabsim B'bayid. As we said yesterday, one may not cut their hair on Chalamayid, one may not launder clothing Chalamayid. But now the Mishnah is going to tell us the exceptions to when clothing can be laundered on Chalamayid. And the first examples are going to be similar to the same examples we had yesterday by hair cutting. Habam Medinas Hayam. Somebody came from overseas. They arrived either on Chalamayid, or they came home right before Yontif. There was not enough time to get a haircut, to launder their clothing. Umebeis Hashivya, or they got out of captivity. And when you're a captive, they don't let you launder your clothing. Somebody came out of jail. Again, a situation where a person is not going to be laundering their clothing, and they got out of these situations either on Chalamayid or too close to Yom to take care of it before. Or the case of a person under a ban, under Nidui, as we mentioned yesterday, that person might launder his clothing, who the sages undid his ban on Chalamayid, either because the ban ended then, or because they lifted it then. But the point is, before Yom Tov, he didn't have a chance to wash his clothing. Now, somebody who asked a sage for an annulment of his vow and it was annulled. Now, in this case, the vow was not to wash his clothing, and at the end, the only time that a chacham, that a sage was able to annul it was on Chalamayid, either because it couldn't find a sage to do it, as we say yesterday, or because the sage can only do it, can only annul it based on certain reasons, and didn't work out. The reason didn't work out until the sage couldn't work it out until Chalamayid itself. But again, these were all examples of people who were not able to wash their clothing before Chalamayid, and therefore they can now wash it on Chalamayid. Now, the next are examples of things that you're allowed to wash over Chalamayid. Mitbachais hayodayim, towels used to wipe your hands. This means basically what we call cloth napkins that are used that while you're eating to wipe your hands while you're eating. So clearly, you can wash it before Chalamayid, but it's going to get dirty again on Chalamayid. And this was something that, again, if you don't have enough of, this would be something, you don't have any extras around, this is what you got. The halacha would be that because they are constantly getting dirty, you can wash them. This means the towels used by barbers. Barbers drape large towels over their customers' shoulders to protect their clothing from falling hair. Since these towels must be repeatedly washed, a barber may launder them in order to cut the hair of those people who are permitted to have their hair cut during Chalamayid. You can say, why would the barber have to wash those towels for? The answer, Chalamayid, if no one's getting a haircut, the answer is there are some people who will be getting a haircut. And when those people come up, you can go ahead and wash those towels because of the fact that they're needed, and there's nothing you could have done about it necessarily. But and again, it wasn't necessarily that you knew before Chalamayid you're going to need it. It came out that you needed it on Chalamayid, and therefore, since it needs to be washed, it needs to be washed after each time. You'd be able to do it during Chalamayid. Okay, that's the second example. And the third example is mitbachais hasvag. We call bath towels. Towels that you dry yourself up after bathing. So these need to be laundered frequently because they become soiled each time they are used. Since they would need to be laundered again on Chalamayid, even if they were washed immediately before the festival, it's permissible to wash them. The point here is that the whole point is we say, you should, we don't want to let you wash things on Chalamayid because we want to make sure you wash them before Chalamayid. But something that if you wash before Chalamayid, they get dirty again anyway and need to be washed. So then you could wash it on Chalamayid if one has no others. Okay, so these are an example of things that could be washed during Chalamayid. Next, hazavin v'hazavais v'hanidais v'hayoldes. These are all examples of people who experience certain types of discharges from their body. There's a zav, a man who has a certain type of discharge. Zav and anida means a woman who menstruates or menstruates beyond a regular period. v'hayoldos, and women who give birth. Now, they are constantly discharging from their bodies, and therefore their garments are constantly getting soiled, getting dirty. And therefore, since they have to change their clothing frequently because of the discharge, they soil their clothing frequently because of the discharges, they're allowed to wash their clothing during Chol Hamoed. The same idea is they bring down here from the Shulchan Aruch. Similarly, it's permissible to wash the clothing of young children, since it is natural for these clothes to become dirty frequently. Something that frequently gets dirty is something you'd be able to wash on Chol Hamoed because of the fact that washing before Chol Hamoed wouldn't have made a difference. So when we're talking about these people mentioned who constantly are soiling their clothing because of their bodily discharges are allowed to wash that clothing on Chol Hamoed. And anyone who goes up from impurity to purity. Okay, so what is the Mishna here referring to? Mishna referring to two people, referring to a person who was a Mitzayra, person who had the plague, the affliction of Tsaras, and now they are going from Tumah to Hara. They have, they're no more, the affliction is gone, they're Tameh, no more Tameh, they're now Tar. While they were Tameh, while they were a Mitzayra may not launder his clothing. That's one of the halachas of Mitzayra. He may not launder his clothing. So now that he's tar, now he didn't have a chance before to launder his clothing, and now he does. The same thing, another example of a person going from impurity to purity is a person who, let's say, was impure because of contact with a dead body. Okay? And that means, so before Yantif, he was still tamei. Now it comes out during Chol Hamoed that he finishes getting sprinkled, and he finishes his whole process. Now he's tar. So he also couldn't wash his clothing beforehand. You know why? Because each time he touches clothing, he make a tummy. So the whole point is he wants to have himself pure. He wants his clothing to be pure. Therefore, he can only do that once he has himself become completely pure. If that process was completed during Chol Hamoed, that would be another kind of person. That's another example of a person going from a state of impurity to purity that can wash his clothing. Usha'ar kol ha'adam asirin. Anybody else is forbidden. Now the Bartanura brings down a case. He's got one garment. That is it. He literally has nothing more than that one garment. He says that is something, even if it's not made out of linen, which it easily dirties, you're allowed to bathe, you're allowed to wash it on Chol Hamoed. And what does it mean that he only has one garment? Literally, that means when he washes it, he basically is undressed. He has nothing else. He's literally undressed when he's washing his clothing. He has nothing else. That is the example of someone who doesn't have any clothing that is allowed to wash his clothing during Chol Hamoed. Again, assuming he got dirty. Okay. Now, do a chalach on the Chofetz Chaim. All right, Daled. Amr Chazal, our sages have said, Al shalosh averis nefraim min adam b'olam hazeh. There are three sins that a person can be punished for in this world, and he can even and with besides for the punishment in this world, he will lose his portion in the world to come. Ve'eluhein, these are they: avodah zara, people who worship idols; v'gilui arayos, people who are involved in illicit relationships, of those mentioned in the Torah that we read on Yom Kippur, at the end of Parshas Achrei Mos, the forbidden relatives, ushvichas damim, and murder. Lashon hara neged kulam, and speaking of lashon hara is equal to all of them. So that's reading that would mean that a person who speaks lashon hara can be in very serious trouble. Our sages bring proofs from this from psukim, from verses. Upirsha arishonim. The commentaries explain that kavana al elu shuhurgulu b'benzeh b'tmidus. We're talking about people who are habitual speakers of lashon hara. A person who once in a while slips up. That's not what we're saying. That's the person who gets this very serious punishments. Person who is habitual with this, and they don't even bother trying to stop themselves from doing it, because this prohibition has become something that is in their mind, they're in their eyes, their perception permissible. They don't bother about it. They don't care about it. They constantly do it. That is the person that is included in this very serious saying of our sages that they can be punished in this world and lose their portion in the world to come. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.